Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Growing Up Aliens. Before just this short podcast commences, I just want to send out condolences to David Wilcock's family, if that is the case. We don't really know yet what's behind that, if he was removed or if he was removed, right? Time may tell. Anyway, yeah, that's really in the realm of his close family at this point. I'm going to just move forward here with some. First, I'll start with something kind of curious. It's another E.T. movie coming out. It's a remake of a Swedish film from 2022. So I just saw the trailer. Interesting. And then we'll look into what Mr. Burchett was talking about because I think he might have spilled a little bit of beans there. Uh, they don't spill anything. It's all on purpose. That's one thing folks should understand is these people don't say or do anything that hasn't already been reviewed. Look at this one here. Nope, I don't want this one. Why is that one up? Well, let's forward that is. All right, there we go. It's like, "Urgh." Now I don't. What are you after doing? All right, there we go. There we go. There we go. Oh, we got Andy here on the side. He podcasts this morning too. So here it is. It's called Watch the Skies, which, we've said before here on this channel. And it's about a little UFO group and this young lady whose father was abducted.
Nobody knows what happened to my dad. I feel normal.
You mean it's not normal to think your father was kidnapped by aliens?
So you believe in aliens and stuff?
Her dad was the leader of that UFO cult.
Denise.
My farmer saw the same thing my dad was looking for all along. What if something took him?
In her life before. They had had one from a young girl. Never put the plug on that yearbook.
I've spent my entire life searching for answers. And now I'm a bit afraid of what I'll find.
So I think
We're on to something.
and there's the thing one of the look would be like a thing. It's the SMHI about that. So when they say it's time to pull the plug on that UFO cult, I think why release this? Why re-release this? So they actually just did English not subtitles, but AI overlay on the Swedish language that was obviously used in a Swedish film. It's curious, and I think that's part of what you're seeing here as I lead into Burchett is that it's time to pull the plug on this UFO cult shit because they've been trying to do that for 80 years now. And whatever they've been trying to do with that hasn't worked. Silencing and blah blah blah. We just keep popping back. It's kind of a whack-a-mole party for them, and I guess they're getting tired of it. So it looks like they're gonna take over the hey, yeah, the alien story, so that they can now control it. So they're gonna engineer it. They're gonna control it, and people are gonna look towards the industrial military complex for their information concerning aliens and I'll lead into that again. This is just the lead into what we're going to talk about with Burchett. And it all kind of falls into place. And it's really a brilliant plan. I'm surprised it took him 80 years to do it. But here, the SMHI, military. So that's the Swedish Meteorological and Hydrological Institute. And it's a weather, water, and climate government-based agency. So they monitor weather, water, and climate.
This känns som stofsål måste everything.
If there's one thing you've taught me, Denise, is that to know is one thing, but to believe is completely different.
Impossible.
Find my dad.
Yeah, so interesting little film there. Stops. There it is. Was her father abducted by aliens, taken into a think tank, hidden down because they've been doing they usually and that's actually what Dr. Sal Pais and some other folks would tell you about that these engineers or regular people, you know, Joel the plumber, he likes to say Joel the plumber, who have unique talents and skills, not degrees, talents and skills. They don't want some asshole with a degree. They want someone who's going to get the job done. Right? So, they're taken down and you disappear into these think tanks. Is that what happened to her father in this movie? I don't know. We'll have to see. But anyway, what I want to do is pull up this guy here. Used to be here. There it is. Not this one. Go away. All right. Pull that there. So, what is all this? Oh, so irritating. All right, let's go. Russ Coulthart, with Tim Burchett. And what does Mr. Burchett have to say here? Well, let's find out. All right, let me get rid of this. Why is that? Oh, so irritating. This thing. It's like, computer crap here. All right.
Hey, I'm Joe Khalil here with Reality Check for Ross Coulthart. We just sat down with Congressman Tim Burchett for an extended interview on his recent briefing that he got, which he came out of with a sort of different perspective and said, look, if the country were able to see and hear what he saw and what he heard, it would be a paradigm shift. You'll see in the interview here that we let him talk. I asked a question and he really just took it and would run with it. But it was a lot of good insight, a little bit of frustration.
You know, that's all choreographed. Right. If you don't want to answer questions that people might be bringing forward, then you command a conversation, and that's what he does. He doesn't answer, and of course, these people never ask any really good questions anyway. But yeah, that's all on purpose. They're trained. They're all trained by the CIA and other groups on how to control conversations, what to say, how to convince people. All of this stuff is a neurological display, and it works every time.
About why there's not progress, more so than there already has been, but a lot of interesting insight from a guy who has now been in the rooms and on the front lines of disclosure. Here is that interview. Congressman, we have heard a lot about this briefing that you got. You've been talking a lot about it, not in detail of what you heard. Sure. But can you lay out, leaving that briefing, seems like you were a bit of a changed man after that. Talk to me about what the feeling was after it.
Well, I've had multiple briefings, and I guess, you know, I get a lot of doubters and people make fun of me, even members of Congress, which is kind of ironic because there's always the guy in the crowd that's makes a joke about it after somebody else does, and they come up to me and they say, man, I need to tell you something, you know, I'm military, or I saw something, or got a lot of people interested in this issue. But and I've had so many of these briefings now. I even had one since the one that you're describing. I had that was a member of our leadership arranged, which tells you the serious nature of this thing.
Yeah.
And, you know, I just think people need to know what we've seen and what these pilots are seeing. And Luna, for instance, we requested all those videos, and she is, you know, gave kind of a deadline when she'd like to have them by. And she calls over there and they say, well, we don't know anything about the letter kind of stuff. The same old stuff what you and I've run into for years on this issue. And America's just ready. I think they would they'd be alarmed about what it is. And I think mostly they'd be alarmed at why the government won't allow it out.
Yeah.
And what's at the base of it. And you know, all the theories aside, whether you think it's extraterrestrial, if it's something from this earth, you know, if it's the Russians or the Chinese or the Americans, which I don't think it is, and then maybe allow some of the pilots to talk and tell exactly what they've seen. And the last briefing, I had some pretty incredible photos, and I think that you should have the right to see those.
Yeah.
And the critics are going to blast it. You know, they're going to say it's AI, it's whatever, but you got to go back and ask yourself, why would some of the best pilots in the world, why would they risk their credibility?
And we're looping back to the same story of bringing forth the military pilots. Why would they risk blah blah blah? And I always just run ragged over the fact that millions, if not billions, of people have great captures. Some of the best footage we have that's been analyzed is you're gonna get, what are you gonna get? Some blurry images from a fighter jet or something, and those images suck. I mean, we've got far better quality video from regular people that's already been analyzed. People are catching these UAP, because a lot of them are ours. I mean, when Washington's going to say about that pretty much every single day, and they're still dismissing the millions of people who are seeing this stuff and capturing really good quality images, and who are contactees and abductees and all that. That's still being completely ignored here. They're still focusing on the military, and there's going to be a reason. Well, this is all on purpose. None of this is by accident. He isn't just talking off the cuff. He's weaving the narrative.
Anytime they make a sighting, a lot of times they'd have to get a psych evaluation, get all this stuff, and even if it's something they saw on radar. But now we've got officers in the Navy seeing these very, very large objects on sonar traveling at a very high rate of speed, something that's exponentially faster than anything we can accomplish. You got to realize that you have an object out there in the ocean that.
All right, so he's already setting it. Okay, they're seeing stuff that is moving and maneuvering in ways that we can't understand using conventional physics, blah blah, right? I can hear, I must hear yourself by you like and it's nothing we have. So this is all so this is all setting up.
Air covers could be hours on end. We have nothing with that capability. You have to run out of fuel, and then when they take off, they just maybe straight up, and the power to do that is the energy it take to fuel Los Angeles. I mean, it is that incredible, and I just don't see any reason why our government should be hiding it. And I don't like going into a meeting and an unelected bureaucrat tells us that that the president is on a need-to-know basis. To me, that should be very telling to America that there's a lot more going on just behind the scenes than we're aware.
And you've heard that directly.
Sure, absolutely, absolutely. And I know Matt Gaetz spoke a couple weeks ago about a briefing he had on a breeding thing between alien life, but he didn't say he'd seen it. He didn't say it was fact. He just said that it was discussed with him by a member of the military. And have I heard those things? Oh, sure, I've heard those before, but I haven't seen anything. And I have my own beliefs about it, but about all what's going on.
Yeah.
But that doesn't throw down right or wrong. I just think it's time for America to get this stuff, get this information.
What can you share about that briefing that really made you come out and say people would be shocked to see this? Can you tell us about
Yeah, it was. I can tell you that just because everything I asked about, because there was someone in there in the meeting I felt like that was there to disrupt, to maybe say that this person was not telling the truth. And again, this person had no reason to lie to us. There's no, it was in the skiff, of course. So I'm very limited on anything I can really say about it. But they said I gave certain incidences that had occurred and or that I'd heard occur, and they could name dates, people, places, and to me it was very convincing. There was and I knew some of it, and they filled in the gaps. And these were things that and there was no hesitation whatsoever. There was no, well, it was it wasn't anything like that. It was just straightforward. And then when this person asked these questions, I felt like they were to disrupt and contradict what they were saying. And went just a complete 180. Yeah. And that's what you're going to have, because you're going to have members of Congress who want to, for whatever reason, they don't want the truth, or they know it, and there's a certain arrogance up here too. You got to admit that. I mean, there's a complete arrogance. And again, I don't know if it's about little green men or flying saucers. I just know we're spending tens of millions of dollars on something. I think we should know what the heck we're spending that money on. And you can, when they bring it all out, just let people make up their own minds, because there's going to be a group that's going to say, and look, I'm a born again Christian. I'm from the forgiven end of that spectrum, but I'm not worried about the demonic element. I hear people.
See, they're going to play on that. So this is a problem in parts of the United States. It's not a problem up here in New England, but when you move into certain parts of the United States, and when the government is trying to bring out aliens, well, there's no ifs, ands, or doubts about that, because that's the plan. If we can just bring out the aliens, we're not saying it's aliens, but it's aliens. They want to bring out the aliens. So the only problem with that is a lot of their constituency, right? A lot of the people who are pro-military, pro-government are also in this religious organization, and that's around different parts of this country, where it's the Bible Belt and places like that. These people are could be saboteurs. They could be a problem with the government's plan. So they're going to have to. How can they? This is the main question here, right? You want to bring aliens forward because that's going to be your main excuse for the stuff you want hidden and the stuff you want to be silenced. Okay. So the problem is you got a bunch of people who you need because they're like big into government and military and stuff like that, but they don't like aliens. So what can you do? What can you do? Looks like they're playing a couple of different roads here. You got the vice president saying, well, they're demonic. And then you got this guy here saying, I don't believe that. I'm a born again Christian, but whatever. Let's see where he goes with it.
But there's no reason for demons to be doing this. It's such a small little area. I mean, they can come up here to Congress as easy as maybe they already have. I don't know. But and do I think it's the Chinese or the Russians? And I go back over this. If it was the Russians, they wouldn't be bogged down in Ukraine. For the Chinese, they'd own us. Some would argue, as I've stated, they own us already, but more so. And would it be the Americans? Why in the world would we risk?
He makes a good point with that because, if it was, say, an Earth-based enemy, which again, this is all created, but, well, if they had exotic tech, wouldn't they just, run rings over everybody? And that's what the Nachtwaffen, right? And of course, that's what happened. We have video of that. And so much testimony from folks who largely have all passed away now during the World War II era, where the spies that were working for the United States government, again, this is all Bill Tompkins material, plenty of information there. I'm not going to go into that. Read Bill Tompkins, read it firsthand. Stop getting secondhand information. So important. I guess that's me being an academic at this point, saying get firsthand info. We have that again through Bill Tompkins and others, Dr. Wood, that the spies came back from Germany and they're like, hey, I saw these things floating in the air with no, like, oh, yeah, they saw UFOs, right? So that's the Germans had advanced tech, and they use that advanced tech not only off Antarctica with Admiral Byrd, giving him a little bit of a, FU. And the ships come limping back. We have information, of course, not only from Admiral Byrd, but also from Bethune, Commander Bethune, who knew Admiral Byrd and flew Admiral Byrd. So, and of course, Frank Chile knew Commander Bethune very well. The Nazis clearly showed the United States that, hey, we got stuff that's going to toast you. And the United States said, well, boy, if you can't beat them, you might as well join them. And that's what happened. So I think they always say, like, for every one Nazi scientist that the Russians got, we got 10. So we made sure with paperclip that we would get the majority of these scientists that had this intel and also the technology. So yeah, that makes sense because it did happen. Like I said, World War II, where the Nazis said, look what we got. And well, they they pretty much ruled the world at that point, right, with the ICC and the syndicate. So
$500 million high-tech aircraft or a fleet of aircraft or a battleship or something to be around these things and a pilot losing their life when we just saw, rightfully so, the president we spent millions of dollars to rescue a pilot.
Yeah.
We did not, and there's no telling what that cost, but that's a signal to the rest.
What you're saying there, and not to talk over what, obviously I don't need to, explain to you, but just to make a highlight of where I'm going with a lot of this. That's just more of my thesis here. So what he's saying here is, geez, who would have UFOs, right? Advanced tech UFOs. He said there wouldn't be, because if it was the Russians, he says, if it was the Chinese, they'd be effing us over, right? And then, of course, we know that the Nazis did and did. But, okay, so he's put that argument out there. So it can't be them. So it can't be from Earth, basically, he's saying here. And this is going to be their argument. This stuff is not from Earth. And then he says, well, it can't be ours because if we allowed secret UFO tech here, that would be obviously, and correctly so, a huge threat to Navy ships and fighter jets and blah, blah, right? He says that, how could we allow that? And then then he says, well, we just spent $1 million or whatever to rescue a pilot. So, this tech, this advanced tech, we don't know what it is, and it can't be ours. And here's why.
World IUI. There's no reason for us to be doing that. And I won't go too far into it, but I've talked to folks that are at the highest levels, and they will tell you that they've asked the one higher up level in the whole security paradigm, I guess, and they've indicated that it is definitely not them.
So that sort of transitions me well to my next question, which is that we've heard rumors about.
Well, and that's true. It isn't them. So they're building a beautiful argument here, which that I think will seep into the trouble areas in the United States. Again, it's the religious areas, okay? And I've always said this. Who does your average person love and trust? Oh, the police. They love the police. They love now, are there sections of society that don't like the police? They're not a problem. Let me just say. So they're looking at sections of society that's a problem. So if you have, who doesn't like the police? Well, largely it could be conspiracy theorists. Again, we're a problem, but they're going to take care of us. But then also, largely poverty-ridden areas who don't like the police, right? They're not a problem. they're not a problem. So the main part of the American public that these people are trying to corral, and this is a Judas horse thing. I call it the Judas horse. Another Judas horse. Is to have the military, which is their number one. Everybody loves the flag wavers, the military. They love the military. And I don't mean to say that people in the military are bad. My father was a lifelong military, and he didn't like the military. He didn't like the military. But there's a lot of innocent, unread in people who are in the military, clueless, and that's not done on purpose. I would say the vast majority of the military is clueless on this stuff. So if they can get the military, which is what he just did, and other members of the government to come forward and say, we don't have this stuff, because guess what? That's not a lie. They don't. They don't have this stuff. We know who does and how it was done. So
President Trump potentially preparing for some level of disclosure about.
And I believe that. I had that very conversation with him.
So where is he on that? Is he ready to do that? And a follow up on that before you get to it is, let's say he makes some kind of statement during the war with Iran. Do you think that sort of undermines? People might say, well, he's trying to distract.
They're always going to say he's distracting. This is just a distraction. And the best day to release this stuff was yesterday. And the second best day to release it is right now.
So is he going to do that?
I hope so. I think he's not beholden to that community.
Yeah.
And
but you've talked to him about it. What's your feeling on whether he's ready?
Well, I don't generally publicly discuss too much what I discussed with the president about, because that could end up, I would not he wouldn't talk to me as freely as he does when we talk. But we talked 14 minutes. I was looking at my watch and I was like, holy cow, that's 14 minutes. It's about a lot of things, but I told him, I said, it's like layers the onion, Mr. President. I said, you just keep peeling it back. Yeah, you put the 1 and 2 people in there, but these lifetime career people are in there, and for whatever reason, they're not releasing anything. And also, I feel like the material or whatever it's out there that we have, we don't really have it anymore because they farmed it out to these corporations, and these corporations are not FOIA-able, Freedom of Information Act.
This is interesting. I'm trying to fit all these pieces together, because what would make sense here? So there are conspiracy. There's large numbers of the population in our arena who know that these aerospace corporations, these think tank secret corporations, have this technology. Now, that was done on purpose ever since 1940s, after 1947, with the Majestic 12 and Truman, where they said we need to make this stuff hidden even from ourselves. And that was the founding of the CIA, which had heavily been influenced by the KGB. The Russians actually were pretty much almost behind the CIA. And yet, of course, NASA was founded by the Nazis. So here he is coming forward saying that before this is complicated. So before he was saying that, no, it doesn't look like it. I've asked everybody and they said, no, it's not ours. The military says, no, we don't have stuff like that. Okay. And now he's coming out and saying, well, it's the corporations. Well, that's correct. The military technically, legally, doesn't have any advanced weapons or advanced technology, the electrogravitic, right? The massless propulsion. They don't have that, because it all belongs to these think tank corporations. That's how they freed themselves. And as we said, with the compartmentalization, and the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. That's brilliant. It's a brilliant plan. This part here confuses me, because I don't know where he wants to go with this, where they want to go with this, because what would make the most sense to me to shut everybody up once and for all is to simply say that this stuff we don't understand, the military doesn't understand. To have the president come out and say this, right? Or to have a military, because right now the president, a lot of people don't like him, so there's an issue there. If he comes forward and begins to discuss this stuff, would that make him more likable? Possibly, so there's a lot of things at play here. But to me, the fastest thing was just to have the military come out and have the president there too, and just say, hey, we don't know what this stuff is. It's alien. And there you go. That frees them up, and it frees up the corporations, because now they're not being hunted down anymore. Sure, they'll be hunted down by, rogue groups, but realistically, we have no power. Where are the benevolent alliance of aliens in this? I have no idea. And they're up there drinking beer or something. I don't know. I don't know, where are they? Are they? I have no idea. I no longer work with them, you know, and I've said that many. So when Ika retired, quit, resigned. That's the word. In the summer, I had quit before him, and then he resigned because he was given bullshit anyway. And that's the thing. We're all going to be given bullshit. They're not going to be giving you anything. We get bullshit from the government. We get bullshit from the alliance of ETs. We get bullshit left and right. So I don't do business like that. So I have no connection whatsoever to any ETs other than, you know, the visitors that I'm directly involved with, like my husband and our friends. That's it. So this is curious. This is a real cliffhanger.
When I can say, hey, FBI, release this stuff. I want to see this stuff. And under FOIA, allegedly they're supposed to release it. But say if Ford Motor Company had it, they wouldn't have to release it. And I feel
That's where we are. Right. So the FBI, the CIA, the Pentagon, the blah, 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 whatever, any government agency, FOIA request, they should. Doesn't mean they're going to. I don't believe that FOIA is a magic wand that you can wave. And I think that's bullshit. I was fighting with my own town, and we had sent a FOIA request, and they never responded. And then finally, my lawyer was able to force their hand. They don't have to respond. You can do a FOIA request. Doesn't mean they're going to respond, unless you're willing to spend money and get a lawyer, get them to you know. And when you're dealing with shit at this level, good luck. So I think FOIA requests are a joke anyway. However, he just said it, right? You simply. And this is what, and here he is revealing exactly what they did in a roundabout manner, is that the military industrial complex simply hid and simply hides all of its advanced tech under private organizations. Now, to me, and what Burchett is kind of leaning into here, if you have Black operations or private organizations holding onto technology that is extremely dangerous because you, the military, has technically nothing to counter it with. It seems like a really bad idea. And this is, I guess, would be the elephant in the room in the political structure. Don't you think that we shouldn't be able to then use the military to force through aggression, and I mean serious, you know, armed infiltration of these aerospace industries, forcing them, just get the military right in there and be like, hand it over. But they're not doing this.
like that's what's happened to a lot of it. And a lot of the stuff we've seen is that I think that we have is probably the people that are dissecting it or whatever they're doing with it probably don't realize exactly what it is or where it came from. They might have an idea, but people with the direct knowledge are mostly gone. So it's kind of like during at Oak Ridge during the Second World War. I've met people. I met this one guy I met one time. I was out knocking on doors, and he was of my parents' age. And I asked him what branch he was in because he was putting his American flag out. And he said, well, I wasn't in the war. I said, oh, okay. And he was kind of sheepish about it. And he said, well, I worked at Oak Ridge. And I was like, if my dad were here, he'd hug you because Daddy was on Okinawa when they dropped the bomb. They thought they were going to invade Japan. They were getting ready to, he's 1st Marine Division. They were going to be in the fight. I said, my daddy was here, he'd hug your neck. My mama would probably give you a kiss on the cheek. But he said he just kind of said this thing and always stuck in my mind. He said, funny thing, he said, my wife worked there too. And I never knew what she did. And she never knew what I did till after the war. I mean, because people honored that back then. It's not everything's a book deal or a clickbait or something. Yeah. And it's compartmentalized. And that makes it harder. It makes it very hard. And then when those people die, direct knowledge.
It doesn't make it harder. That's the the curious part here, because if you have companies holding on to extremely dangerous, because this is what this stuff can be used for, technology, wouldn't the military want to have access to it? Like they don't have any kind of way they could force access? Because let me tell you, if you and let's just say me and a bunch of other people got together and we started a company, it's a fairly large company, and we're creating advanced tech. We're building, right, free energy devices, room temperature, fusion, massless. We're doing shit like this, Tesla type, You don't think the military is going to knock on our door? They would. We'd be fucking. Well, I mean, Dave Rossi did something in his garage. And I mean, we all know for ourselves, if you do something that you set off some kind of a frequency, a gravity waves, something like that they pick up, they're at your house. So I don't understand how they can just overlook what's going on when these corporations are building this kind of stuff. It's just this, because this kind of stuff that anyone would hold is a danger, can be used for dangerous situations. But everyone's kind of like looking, or oh no, I don't, it's fine. To me, their way out is to say it's alien. But then he just said something about so maybe they're going to back. I don't know. Is there going to be a back out where these corporations come forward, Lockheed, Bigelow, and Raytheon, and your defense contractors are going to come forward and say, we don't have anything like that. It's got to be aliens. This to me would be a great way for them to not have to worry about this anymore. Just claim that it's all aliens, that this kind of technology, we've never successfully reverse engineered anything, blah, 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 and it's that to me is what disclosure is going to look like, in my opinion. Because the last thing they want is if any of that tech comes forward, if we have any of that tech, if they fully announce that, then we've got a problem, because your entire structure of society, the economic structure, the big pharma structure, the big chem structure, all this shit that we don't need, that shouldn't exist anymore, it falls apart. It's in fact, it's already obsolete. Their ship is already on the bottom of the ocean. And that's kind of where we are in society. But we are at a loss unless the good side, the resistance, gets military support. As long as the military supports the Sith and the interstellar corporate conglomerate that operates here on this planet, until the military stops supporting them, I don't see what we can do, unless we get ET assistance, which they don't give a shit. So, I don't know. But anyway, that's a curiosity, and be interesting to hear folks' thoughts on this very, I call it, confusing word salad, but not word salad, smorgasbord that we're being handed here. I don't know what's going on. So anyway, we'll leave it at that. And as always, see you upstairs.